Hi there. Today we will be discussing non-dualistic experiences and their psychological significance, their psychological benefits. I will be discussing this purely from my own personal perspective, meaning as someone who has experienced those experiences, and I can sort of see the effects that they had on me over the years. Over in this video, I'll go through what it actually means, the benefits of those, which I believe there are quite a few, and also how to get there. My name is Nerius. I created this channel to share my experiences of self-development, training my brain, training my mind, right? Becoming more sharp, more relaxed, more at peace, dealing with my own shit, with my own trauma, all of that, because I believe that anyone can do that. And this channel is for that. So we can head into the topic, which is, well, what is a dualistic experience? What is a non-dualistic experience? Maybe let's begin with the concept of a dualistic experience. When we talk about these things, when you hear these terms, they're usually mentioned in spiritual circles, or in circles where people are exploring their consciousness. Let's put it that way. When you explore your consciousness, sooner or later you start noticing, let's say, how it functions, how it's structured. One of the ways in which you can see a certain architecture of our experience in yourself is when you start perceiving how you're perceiving, a kind of a metacognition. Once you engage in that, sooner or later you notice that, wait a second, it's as if there's two things in reality, in my consciousness. There's me, and then there's like a separation, and there's the other, right? And the other is just the object of your perception, right? If you're looking at the wall right now or whatever, it's you sitting here, you're kind of aware of yourself, but then there's also a wall behind you or in front of you, whatever. What this means is that whatever you look into, you are always dividing the world into two parts. Why is that important? Well, it's important. It makes sense why you would do that, because you are a separate individual, right? So psychologically, right, you divide things up, right? So you can see the difference. This is my body, this is me, this is my personality, this is a wall, this is a table, this is Joe, this is Jane, and so on and so forth. So you divide the world to make sense of it, to navigate in it. Now, it makes sense from a practical standpoint to create these divisions inside yourself, because they're like psychological conceptual divisions. And I know this topic is kind of like maybe intermediate to advanced, but anyone who's on this journey of inner work will inevitably come to it and will start wondering about it. So if we know that, and that's just think about it yourself, it seems a basic experiential thing that, we divide the world like that. The issue or the question comes, or the problem comes, or the desire for other experiences comes when you start considering your sort of ultimate place in this universe. Because if you divide the universe up, yourself and the object, that's great for practical matters, but it creates a kind of a psychological alienation from the world. You feel separate. You feel alone even from the larger world, from humanity, from the universe, right? So, and that sort of a division, I would argue, is maybe one of the biggest reasons for a kind of a existential angst, right? Where you're always kind of stressed out existentially. Like you always realize that, oh man, it's this big universe out to get me and me, right? There's this separation. When you get into all kinds of practices for, developing your perception, developing your consciousness, meditations and all of that, you inevitably start going towards the experience of non-dualistic experience. A non-dualistic experience is, well, quite the opposite. It is the experience of experiencing yourself, right, the perceiver, and the object of your perception as the same thing. Now you might say, well, what do you mean? It's clearly not the same thing. And it's like, well, yes, it's separated by a physical distance. Maybe it's a different body or whatever. But your psychological conceptual division can be undone or changed, at least momentarily, to experience a different kind of reality, which is the non-dual experience, a non-dual reality. The first time that I experienced it was I was meditating in a tree. I remember going many years ago, maybe even like 10 years ago or so, and I went near the river or whatever, and a nice tree with a nice way to sit there, and I thought I'm going to sit down there and meditate. And I remember meditating, and at a certain moment, something clicked where the experience turned completely different. I remember looking at the tree, like at the leaves moving there, and the most weirdest thing started happening, which I felt as if the tree is also me, right? There was no difference between, I didn't assign like a difference, a separation for the leaf, for the tree. And it felt, when the tree was moving in the wind, it felt like it's not you that was moving. I was moving. It's one singular thing was moving. Me, the tree, the same, the wind, as well and so forth. Now you might say, well, come on, Eric, like, is that even relevant? So you had a weird, trippy experience or whatever. It's just one of the more simple ones. And I would say yes, because here's the problem. Whichever way you will try to solve your psychological suffering and try to solve your life problems and try to make yourself feel better, there are inherent limitations in that if you are constantly pitting yourself against the world. It's you and the world. You inevitably enter into a sort of I don't know if it's a problematic relationship, but it's a relationship that has its limits, right? So you will always feel that, a bit of that angst. And I would argue that the only way to feel finally, I'd say, at peace with what is understanding that, well, what isn't very separate from you, aka that non-dual experience that you experience. And once you experience that, your perception of life changes. You find in yourself a kind of inner peace which you didn't know before, because it doesn't mean that you walk around enlightened like a Buddha all the time, feeling non-dual. Far from that. That's a way larger goal, probably, becoming a Buddha. But what you experience is a kind of making peace with the world. You're no longer in an eternal conflict against it, because, well, if it is you, right? And by the way, when I say this, I'm not talking about an intellectual exercise of saying, this is me. I'm saying that the division that you're causing, right? All you do is just, for a moment, stop causing that division. And that is what creates the non-dual experience. You're not doing anything extra. You're not assigning value, right, to the objects around you. You're just seizing the dualistic division that you create in your mind kind of on autopilot. And it takes a bit of sort of a training to let go of that. And even experiencing that once or twice or a few times in your life, I would argue it's enough to give you a way deeper understanding into who you are and into consciousness, which is consciousness, your consciousness. It's you have these attributes, you have your own ego, which separates that, but ultimately it's just a sort of a neutral being, a neutral observation, a neutral perception, which then later on, because of our, the separate body, the capacity that we have. That's why we create that. And it makes sense for practical purposes, but it also makes sense to be able to oscillate between that and that. Now, how do you get there? I'd say, typical meditations of all kinds are useful here. You can definitely consider intellectually, right, this question. I think that it can help to set the stage for that. But the experience itself is not an intellectual experience. It's a consciousness perception shift that happens, and you will feel it. The typical way to do that is, right, to meditate and to keep noticing the moments where you're making these inner divisions and distinctions, right, between you and the world. So when you're meditating, maybe you're doing some open eye meditation and you're observing something, right, you no longer divide the world psychologically. And it's a very subtle thing to do, which I think it takes a kind of dedication to reach that place. But I think once you know and understand that, maybe this video will be helpful for that. It helps you go for that goal more easily. I don't think it's necessary maybe for everyone, but if you're serious, on your inner journey, I think you will probably experience it either way. Maybe it's helpful to have something like this to shed some light on that, so that it makes sense when you experience it. Like, oh, it's probably that. So I hope this was helpful to you. Let me know if you have any questions below. It's a bit of a complex maybe topic. Maybe I didn't cover all of it. So if you want to ask additional questions, and see you in the next video.